Hey, welcome to the Sales Strategies for Christian Coaches podcast. I'm Justin Janowski, your host, and I remember my first two attempts trying to run a Christian coaching business. They were total failures from the world's business perspective. I had one client the first time and was out of business. The second time I had 3 clients, and after a few months was out of business. The third time I started a Christian coaching business was in 2018. I started Faith to Influence, and I did over $250,000 in revenue my first year. Now we've done millions of dollars in sales, and I've worked with over 1,000 clients. Well, the big difference between those first 2 attempts and the third was that I learned how to build a system around sales and marketing. Now, God's provision is the biggest factor in all of this, and so glory to Him. And what I know is we need to find a high integrity, loving way to market and create sales in our businesses. That is the path to success for the Christian coach. That's what this podcast is all about, helping you find those strategies. And today I want to talk about handling objections. Because if you hold sales calls, when you hold sales calls, inevitably you're going to run into objections, challenges, fears, concerns, questions, either before or after you make your offer. There are going to be reasons why people aren't ready to make the big decision, or concerns that people need to work through before they're ready to make the big decision and say yes to your offer. These are objections. And one of the things I want you to recognize about objections is that they're normal, they're common, they're a part of the process. And we have to normalize that part of the process. I think some people get to the end of the sales call and they hear an objection and they're quick to panic because they're not sure how to respond, or they act as if they weren't expecting this. One of my mentors, Jake Merriman, used to say that the amateur receives an objection and they panic. And the master, on the other hand, receives an objection and they think to themselves, an objection, to be expected. It's part of the process. It's just the next step in the process. And many of the sales I've made over my career have begun with objections after the offer before my prospect comes to yes. That's really common. It's really normal. And I want to invite you to respond to objections, not with canned one-liners and not with fear or anxiety, not in a way that's combative at all, but instead with what I call the 3 C's of handling objections. These are really more about the nature of emotionally how you show up, how you respond, the character you bring to the conversation, then this is about a script. But I know that when you show up in the right character and the right emotional response to things, it builds trust and it makes it easier for the right people to say yes and take the next step with you and become your client. These are the 3 C's. Number 1, calm. We want to respond to objections with calm. There was a time in my sales career when I was selling Cutco knives as an 18, 19, 20-year-old that I responded to everything with like enthusiasm and intensity. And I remember that I had a lot of energy that felt almost chaotic at times. And some people show up that way in sales conversations. They show up that way in objection handling. Then I had the opportunity to have a couple of great mentors who brought a tremendous amount of calm to the way that they led. I remember, and I'll name them, Jim Deal and Derek Dahl. These were 2 guys who became managers, mentors, leaders. They were company owners who I worked for. And in working for them, I saw another way of leading that didn't have intensity, that didn't even necessarily have like over the top charisma that I was used to seeing in the sales world. But instead, they led with thoughtfulness. They led with calm. When situations became chaotic, when there was conflict in the workplace, when people were stressed out or emotional, when there was challenge, instead of rising to that emotional level, I saw these men bring calm to the storm. They were great models. Jesus, by the way, often did this. But both Jim and Derek were great models for me. And I loved how they would slow down. I loved how they would take gaps between the things that they said. How if you said something to them, they would think and consider before responding. I loved how it didn't feel like a big show, how their response oftentimes wasn't impressive as much as it was thoughtful and solid and appropriate. They brought calm, they brought peace. And I remember recognizing how safe it felt to be in the presence of their leadership because of that calm. And so as I grew as an entrepreneur, as a salesperson, as a leader myself, I aimed to emulate that. And I found a way to integrate that into my authentic leadership voice. And I want to encourage you to do the same. When objections arise, when things go wrong, when the person you're with is feeling emotional, can you meet them and invite them into calm and peace? Can you create that kind of environment? Because when you create a calm and peaceful environment on your sales calls, in your coaching calls, or in anything else that you do, it becomes easier for people to trust you and easier for people to make decisions and say yes, and even make shifts and transformations and changes before those decisions. Oftentimes the exact kind of shifts and transformations and changes that are required from that person to make a decision. Because one thing to recognize is that the person who should say yes to your offer but finds himself wanting to say no is oftentimes doing that from this place of an old pattern of who they've been rather than the place of who they want to become. And for some of your prospects, they actually need your coaching, and they actually need a transformational shift to happen in that conversation with you to begin and to take the first step of becoming the person who can say yes, the person who can actually become who God created them to become, the person who's ready to take that next step and getting a little bit more of what they want in their life or their business or whatever it is. There's a transformation that's required for them to step into the identity of somebody who can say yes, who can make a big decision, who can invest in themselves, who can believe in themselves enough to take the first step. And I believe that you showing up with a calm, steady presence will make it easier for people to do that. The second thing I want you to bring when you're responding to objections after calm, and part of the calm is what I mentioned before. It's not being surprised by the objection. It's making it no big deal that they objected, that it's okay, that this is normal, that this is part of the process. If they feel that from you, then they'll feel safe having a meaningful conversation around the objection. The second thing I want you to bring is confidence. So while we're bringing calm, let's bring confidence and certainty. Oftentimes people who are objecting are doing so, or people who are asking questions or need time to figure this out and to sort through a process to make the decision. They are doing so because they've got uncertainty. And for the uncertain person, one of the greatest things that they could experience is certainty and confidence. And when they know that you believe in you, it makes it easier for them to say yes. When they know that you are confident in them and you believe in them and their capacity to solve their problem or achieve their goal, they're going to feel safer saying yes. When you've got confidence in your program and your price, it's going to feel easier for them to say yes. This confidence grows through repetition. So when you respond to objections more times, when you work with more clients, when you hold more sales calls, all of these things give you the repetitions that you need to grow in your confidence. There can also be a prayer for this and an invitation to God to bring you to more faithfulness, more surrender to Him, more trust in Him, which can create a lot of confidence. The Holy Spirit can create a lot of confidence as He works through you in a sales conversation, a coaching conversation, and everything else that you do. And so while we're bringing calm, we want to pair that with confidence. And oftentimes what people really need from you is just an encouraging word to make the decision. Maybe the truth or the affirmation that you know that they can do this and that you believe that you can help. And if you can solve this problem together, you'd love to do it, that you really want to be their coach. So oftentimes I'm going to be like, hey, listen, I totally get it. This is a big decision. This is scary. One of the things I want you to know is that I really believe in you. I believe that you can do this. And I also really believe that I'm the right coach to help you achieve this goal. I'm confident if we work together, we can get this done. Do you also believe that we can do this together? That's one way that you could handle this. Or you could say, what other questions do you need answered to feel ready to make a decision on this? And there, again, I'm making up a scenario right now. This isn't a script as much as it's an idea, but I want you to feel the calm and the confidence. One of the ways that we communicate the calm and the confidence is to act like you've been there before, because you have, right? In most cases, I'm not talking about acting or playing make believe, but to show up as if this objection is normal, that you've heard it before, that they're normal and they're okay. And so when somebody says, it feels like such a big investment, I'm like, I get it. Or they're like, man, I've got all these bills and I invested in this other coach and it didn't work out and I'm just not sure I have the cash flow. I totally get it. There are a number of different ways that we can spend our money. And this is a big investment. Tell me more about what that means for you. You can hear the calm and the confidence, hopefully, in that response. They're maybe talking frenetically and sharing the story, and I'm understanding that. I'm receiving that. I'm telling them it's okay. It's normal. I totally get it. This is a big investment, or I totally get it. This does take a lot of time. Or I understand if you've worked with other coaches before and it hasn't worked out, I completely understand why this would feel scary. This would feel like a leap. Tell me more about that for you. So agreeing with them, understanding them, validating them, and then moving to a question to learn more is a really great way to communicate your calm and your confidence. And this question piece gets to that third C, which is curiosity. The more we can remain present and curious with our prospects, the more success we're going to have on both sides. Your aim in receiving and handling and responding to objections should be to understand the other person better, to understand what they're feeling, what they're thinking, what they're going through, what are the events of their life that have led them to feeling and thinking and going through these things right now? What do they really want? What stands in the way? What pattern do they need to overcome? Who do they need to be to say yes to this? What questions do they need answered to feel satisfied and confident in making a decision? To increase your understanding is going to help you and the other person come together to make the best decision, whether that's for them to say yes or no or not right now. And I'm really open to all of these kinds of decisions at the end of a sales call. What I'm committed to is helping the person I'm with make the best decision for themselves through a process of leadership. And that requires my curiosity and presence. So I'm going to say things like, tell me more about that. Or why do you feel that way? Or how long have you felt that way? Or tell me more about that other experience that you had with the other coach. And how did that make you feel? These kinds of curious follow-ups, these kind of curious questions make a huge difference in people working through solving the problem and finding their right answer. And so that's the reminder, is to respond to objections with the calm and confidence, to validate how they're feeling and to understand them, but then to follow it up with curiosity and more questions, to dig deeper and to find the truth. And ultimately, when we find the truth with our prospects, that's going to lead them to the right answer for them in this situation. And ultimately, it's going to be an expression of the coaching that you're going to provide for them when you work with them beyond this call. They're going to get to experience and feel what it's like to ask and receive great questions and to be understood and to be seen and to be validated and celebrated and encouraged. They're also going to understand what it feels like to be asked the bold, challenging, true questions that we need to be asked to process and make the best decisions that we can in our lives, our businesses, our relationships, or whatever else it is that you help people with. This is how we want to show up when we receive objections, questions, and concerns at the end of a sales conversation, with calm, confidence, and curiosity. When you're in that state, it's going to be very easy for the right people to become your clients. Good luck implementing these strategies. If you want more help learning how to develop out your sales strategies and the map and playbook that's going to lead you to your clients, I would love for you to join my free 90-minute live training on Zoom called Land More Coaching Clients. You can join us and sign up by going to landcoachingclients.com, www.landcoachingclients.com, and we'll be together in person soon, working on developing out your map to a successful sales strategy in your business. God bless you. Good luck implementing, and I'll talk to you more soon. See ya.